would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that.
Linda McMahon, the education secretary, said on Wednesday she was unsure if teaching students about two of the most notorious racist episodes in U.S. history would fall foul of the Trump administration's onslaught against diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI. Testifying before the House of Representatives, Education and Workforce Subcommittee, McMahon appeared uncertain of her facts when confronted by Summer Lee, a Democratic representative from Pennsylvania. Lee asked her about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, and Ruby Bridges, a civil rights worker who was a 6-year-old, braved a screaming mob to become the first black child to attend a previously all-white school. The exchange occurred after Lee asked her if teaching an African American history course would breach the administration's anti-DEI policies. "I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package," she said. "So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI." Lee said she was unsure what both sides of a Black history course would be and raised the questions about Tulsa and Bridges, prompting McMahon to respond that she would look into them.
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that.
That in turn led to Lee asking, "Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?" McMahon replied, "I'd like to look into it more." The Tulsa episode is widely seen as the single worst outbreak of racial violence in American history, when an attack on the city's Black community led to the destruction of more than 1,000 homes and business, and the deaths of between 50 and 300 people, according to various estimates. The attack happened during a period of racial tensions marked by the growth of the Ku Klux Klan. Lee then asked if it would be illegal to teach Bridges' book, Through My Eyes, which documents her experience of attending a formerly segregated school in New Orleans in 1960, under the escort of federal marshals. The episode was later depicted in a famous Norman Rockwell painting, entitled The Problem We All Live With. McMahon said she had not read Bridges' book, leading Lee to ask, "Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?" McMahon, a billionaire former president of World Wrestling Entertainment, tried to respond, "If you have any specific examples you would like to." Lee cut her off, saying, "That was an incredibly specific example."
How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That
to
was a
cite,
specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was
for
an
you-
incredibly
for
specific
you to
example.
submit
I named
those
a
in your
specific book.
question.
Ruby Bridges is a key figure in the American Civil Rights Movement. At just 6 years old, she became the first black child to integrate an all-white elementary school in the South, William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans, Louisiana, in 1960. Who is Ruby Bridges? Born September 8, 1954, in Tylertown, Mississippi, moved to New Orleans with her family as a child. At age 6, she passed a test that allowed her to attend a previously all-white school. The historic moment. On November 14, 1960, Ruby was escorted by 4 federal marshals through a hostile white crowd as she entered William Frantz Elementary. Parents pulled their children out of school. Only one teacher, Barbara Henry, agreed to teach Ruby, and she taught her alone in a classroom for a full year. Ruby's strength and dignity in the face of hate became an enduring symbol of the struggle for desegregation. Cultural impact. Norman Rockwell's painting, The Problem We All Live With, 1964, famously depicts Ruby walking to school surrounded by marshals. She later authored books, including Through My Eyes, a memoir for children and teens, This Is Your Time, 2020, a powerful letter to young people. Her story is taught in schools as a cornerstone of civil rights history, though controversially, some areas have attempted to ban or limit that instruction in recent years. Legacy and Honors founded the Ruby Bridges Foundation to promote tolerance, education, and unity. Honored by President Bill Clinton in 2001, and continues to advocate for civil rights and educational equity. Here's a poignant excerpt from Sus Through My Eyes, Ruby Bridges' own account of her first day at William Frantz Elementary. There were barricades and people shouting and policemen everywhere. I thought maybe it was Mardi Gras. As we walked through the crowd, I didn't see any faces. When we climbed the high steps to the front door, there were policemen in uniforms at the top. It must be college, I thought to myself. This passage beautifully illustrates Ruby's childhood innocence, even amid a tense, hostile environment. She compared the chaos to Mardi Gras, not fully grasping the danger. Her comparison to college shows how limited her understanding was as a 6-year-old thrust into a monumental moment. Here's a powerful excerpt from Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, describing her experience inside the classroom after crossing the angry mob. Mrs. Henry greeted me with a smile and showed me around the classroom. But for days, I was the only one there. No other children came to class. Their parents had kept them home. So it was just me and Mrs. Henry. She taught me as if the room were full. She was white and I was black, and we didn't care. We were alone, but we became very good friends. Why this matters? This moment captures the isolation Ruby felt, being the only child in the school, the courage and compassion of her teacher, Barbara Henry, who defied pressure to refuse Ruby, a rare example of cross-racial solidarity in the Deep South during Jim Crow. Ruby Bridges has reflected many times on her experience, and her perspective as an adult carries deep emotional and historical weight. Here's what she has shared in interviews and her later writings. Reflections. Later in life. On her teacher, Mrs. Henry. She showed me her heart. She never missed a day, and she never made me feel different. Not once. Ruby Bridges, in a 2020 interview with NPR Corps. Mrs. Henry became Ruby's hero. Ruby has said she credits her teacher for being the first white person to show her that not all white people were filled with hate. On the trauma and fear. I was afraid to eat because one of the people in the crowd said they were going to poison me. For a whole year, I only ate food from home, and I never went out for recess, from speeches and interviews. She's spoken about the fear she experienced as a child, fear that she didn't fully understand at the time, yet she says she never hated the people yelling at her. On forgiveness and faith, my mother and I prayed for the people outside the school every day. She told me that Jesus prayed for the people who hurt him, so I should too. From her book and public talks, Ruby was raised with strong spiritual values, which she says helped her process the hatred with compassion, not bitterness. On her legacy, kids know nothing about racism. It's passed on. We have to be careful what we're teaching. Ruby Bridges, 2021. She's emphasized that racism is a learned behavior and believes that the key to progress is education, conversation, and exposure. Today, Ruby Bridges is a passionate advocate for civil rights, youth empowerment, and education. She founded the Ruby Bridges Foundation, which works to fight racism through education and community building. Her children and grandchildren now attend integrated schools, something she says proves progress is possible, but the work is not finished. America was built on hard truths. That the U.S. was built on the backs of enslaved black people is a historical fact, not political spin. The foundation of the American economy, particularly in the South, was laid by free black labor under slavery, followed by generations of exploitation, segregation, and systemic discrimination. To erase or water down that truth in classrooms is to lie to future generations. Why teaching the full truth matters. If kids don't learn the full story, they can't understand the systems they live in today, like mass incarceration, wealth gaps, or housing discrimination. If kids don't learn about injustice, they may unknowingly participate in it. If kids don't hear about the courage of people like Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Fannie Lou Hamer, or Ruby Bridges, they miss out on learning how everyday people can fight for justice. History is not hate, it's a warning. Efforts to ban DEI, Black history, or divisive concepts are often disguised as protecting children. But what they're really doing is protecting systems of power from accountability. If these programs are not taught for the next generation to know of injustice and what this country is capable of, then history is bound to repeat itself. That's not just a theory. It's happened before, with Jim Crow laws, with COINTELPRO, with redlining, with the war on drugs. Each time, the public forgot or was misled about how injustice grows quietly when people aren't educated. What we must do, Protect DEI and inclusive curricula in schools. Encourage truth-telling, not censorship. Support teachers, libraries, and local school boards in their fight to preserve honest education. Speak up, like you're doing now, because silence helps erasure win. Why DEI matters. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs aim to teach accurate and inclusive history, promote empathy, respect, and critical thinking, help students understand how bias and injustice work so they can help prevent it in their own communities. Removing or censoring this kind of education risks repeating history by ignoring it. What's happening now? The Trump administration, through officials like Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, has signaled an aggressive rollback of DEI efforts. They claim it's about preventing ideological indoctrination, but critics say it's really about erasing uncomfortable truths, like the Tulsa Race Massacre, Ruby Bridges' story, or systemic racism. If we stop teaching these stories, children may never learn how deeply racism has shaped America. Acts of courage, resistance, and change, like Ruby's, get lost. A generation may grow up less equipped to recognize or confront injustice. What experts and survivors say, Ruby Bridges herself has condemned efforts to ban her story, calling them a step backwards. Survivors of events like Tulsa and civil rights leaders believe that education is the front line in fighting hate. Studies consistently show that inclusive education reduces prejudice and promotes better school outcomes for all students. My view. Getting rid of DEI programs doesn't protect children. It shields them from the truth and weakens the nation's moral compass. Stories like Ruby Bridges don't teach hate. They teach the power of standing up to hate and the importance of kindness, courage, and compassion.
McMahon was equally vague when asked if schools could be penalized for accurately teaching that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. She said that social studies should all be taught accurately, and that we should hear all sides. When Lee raised the question in the context of recent changes in Oklahoma, where the state's school superintendent recently ushered in the introduction of election conspiracy into the curriculum. These include asking students to identify discrepancies in the 2020 poll.
How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
That
to
was a
cite,
specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was
for
an
you-
incredibly
for
specific
you to
example.
submit
I named
those
a
in your
specific book.
questions.